When we're out fishing, we stay offshore for a few days, and I love that first get up, look around. Usually you see a great big ocean. That's my first morning view.
We're thrust in one of the most beautiful places in the world. The oceans are right up against mountains, and whales are jumping, and fish are on the table that you caught.
If you like the outdoors and you like people, this is the place. Alaska's it.
This is our happy place. This is magical out here.
The elders told us growing up, when the two first major clans that ever came to Sitka, they saw something in the distance. It looked to them like a flash or a blink. It was Mount Edgecombe volcano erupting. Our people, we give it the name Ugh. Ugh, it means to flash or blink. And volcanologists believe the last time that volcano erupted was between 10 to 12,000 years ago. So that tells you how long our Tlingit people have lived in just this area alone. We're still here.
The beauty of Alaska is it's dynamic, super dynamic.
Our environment really influences what we do, how we do it.
The climate here is just unforgiving, to say the least.
Being a part of it and learning to adjust to adapting your mind, body, and spirit to the elements around you has been very important for our people. Very tough people, very tough.
Alaska is very diverse. All the communities are geographically very separated from each other. Every community has its own power grid, its own energy systems, its own sort of unique needs and resources available.
Juneau is on the mainland, but it's effectively an island. We have roads, but they don't go to any other town. So everything comes in either on an airplane or on the barge.
I think the Alaskan ethos is an independent ethos. There's plenty of space here. For the open-minded, industrious type person, you can make a meal out of it.
We both were in love with Alaska and we wanted to stay. So the big deal was, how do you make a living in Alaska? A friend of ours, as a joke, said, you ought to start a brewery.
Starting a brewery in Alaska, it became an obsession.
There were no breweries in Alaska at the time. There was really old beer up here because, of course, everybody shipped everything from down south up that they didn't want.
We were at the beginning of the craft beer revolution, making Alaskan amber. In 1986, that was quite different. I mean, it was a real departure from the mainstays.
I like the freedom that we have here. We have a lot of local ingredients that we use.
Everything that we do has origin here. You know, whether it's an IPA or, we've done sours on occasion, or a porter or seltzers.
We have to do things differently. We do think outside the box because we are outside the box.
We've always been conscious of our waste. Juneau doesn't have a huge landfill, so we really need to deal with all of our waste. So minimizing that to start with, and then repurposing it.
And we've become an innovator in the industry out of necessity.
It also helps us financially to be sustainable. Like, we used to pay for CO2 that we now capture. We use our own waste stream to create our beer.
We dry our grain. That process led to the waste grain being able to be burned as a fuel. When you can turn your waste into fuel and you don't have to use diesel, that doesn't get any better than that.
Beneficial electrification is using electricity to displace oil so that the money stays in your local economy, isn't exported with each empty oil barge, and that nobody loses from the proposition. The cost of heating homes in Alaska is considerable. It's the biggest part of everybody's personal budget is space heating. We have the ability now to use electricity to heat our homes. Nowadays, we're using air source heat pumps.
We put a heat pump in the main part of the house a few years ago and took out the diesel heater, and it was wonderful. The heating bill went down, didn't have to smell the diesel's exhaust when you're outside.
For the whole time I've ever worked here, in the wintertime, the furnace always went out. It was always cold in here. And the furnaces, you use a lot of oil for that. A lot of oil, and it's not very reliable. This building itself is very special to me. We always refer to this as the ANB Hall, Alaska Native Brotherhood Hall. I grew up here. A lot of functions happen here with traditional people, ceremonies, teaching of the language, teaching of the songs and dance, the history, the legends. A lot of things have happened here. So it'd be nice to have something a little more economically sound that would help heat the place.
In order to start saving money, we have to spend money. Ironically, it's dirt cheap to put in a diesel system. So many of the communities in Southeast Alaska, even though they're surrounded by phenomenal resources, don't have the financial resources to develop them. Places farther north that become ice-locked in the winter have to have their diesel flown in, so you can only imagine the cost of diesel and therefore the cost of electricity and heating in those communities. We could install heat pumps all over the place, but we have to make the electricity clean and cheap enough to run those. Matching that demand with developing the supply to meet that demand, that is one of the biggest challenges we face in the region.
We get essentially 99.8% of our electric energy from renewable sources. Our job is to capture all of the renewable resources that we can and deliver it to users most cost effectively.
As an islanded utility, we produce all the power that's used on the island. The traditional way of utilizing the energy is essentially generating to the demand. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're using the total capacity of our generation plants.
We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars on our hydro infrastructure, but realistically, we're at about 2/3 utilization of our hydro generation potential, with water spilling over the dam or excess water behind the dam.
We have excess generation capacity much of the year. The paradigm shift is to move forward and utilize that total capacity.
If we could use that, either heating schools, heating community buildings, if we can use that to produce a decarbonized fuel and then sell that fuel, excess, that will lower our electric rates.
Fuel production can be turned off and on without significant impact to a bottom line.
If we can take excess electrons, generate a decarbonized fuel that we can store for months or even years, what does that do to a really isolated community? What if you took that decarbonized fuel, put it in a fuel cell that would produce both heat and electricity, and you put it next to a greenhouse? So now that rural community could have food, it could have electricity, and it could have heat. And food is the energy for people.
Sustainability has a lot to do with how we get our energy, but also how we get our food. There's a water, food, energy nexus in Southeast Alaska.
I see this massive gap in our food coverage. We're almost a completely self-sufficient community, except we ship in all of our food and we rely on that.
It's essentially 95% of the food in Alaska is imported.
We get a barge from Seattle. That takes a minimum of a week, and it's expensive.
If we had a shipment that's late, within like 3 days' time, the shelves will be like barren.
Take any major city. What would happen when truckers don't drive trucks? You have food insecurity. That's not resiliency.
The benefits of local, it's actually a matter of our survival and our sustainability here as a community.
We really also wanted to make it a viable option for somebody to make a living growing produce here.
We realized that ultimately we just needed to have our own market. So this is our store. Welcome. Panhandle Produce.
Love it.
Local food for local people. We have small producers in their own backyard gardens. We have people who are indoor producers who are, either new or experienced. We've also got seasoned farmers who've been doing this for decades. As long as at the end of the day, the source is from Alaska, that's what we want. The thing is with Southeast Alaska, produce is not so easy to come by, but one thing that we're a lot more wealthy in, if you will, would be seafood. So also it's important to support your local fishermen.
Commercial fishing along coastal Alaska is the economic backbone. In a lot of communities, it is the only economy, really.
Well, Alaska is the biggest seafood source for the country. These are new pounds of protein that every year the ocean is naturally generating.
I'm a lifelong commercial salmon troller. I'm born into the salmon troll fishery and I absolutely love it. The absolute freedom and challenge of figuring out every day how to adjust to the realities of the weather, the fish, the dynamics of fishing around other boats.
A big part of what it takes to be a good fisherman is to be recognizing patterns and recognizing when they change.
Us fishermen out here every day are kind of like the canaries in the coal mine. We are seeing stuff that is truly dystopian. And whatever you believe the cause of climate change, there's no denying that it is happening. Conserving is the first priority in Alaska. It's in our state constitution.
If you cannot manage a fishery sustainably, you have to shut it down. And it's the only state in the country that has that in there. So we take it seriously. Sustainability isn't just about the fish for me, it's about the fisheries. It has to be about jobs.
I think Alaska is the gold standard for commercial fisheries management.
Instead of we want more fish today, we want more fish forever.
We're looking a lot now at energy transition and how do we help our fishermen be better climate stewards.
This little Maritron thing monitors all my fuel consumption, when the hydraulics are on, when they're off, so we can learn how to conserve fuel.
The obvious next step is hybrid boats and eventually a transition to hydrogen or some renewable energy, maybe ammonia, as a way to power our boats with a zero carbon footprint. I think people see Alaska as a place where there's still a chance to do it right and find that balance between protecting the fish, having local economies that depend on natural resources, but those natural resources are still healthy and productive.
We like to look at technology as the solution, but sometimes the old school knowledge that we've had and simply haven't utilized is really where we get the best gains.
Picking the best from technology and making room for the resurgence and the return of native cultures here is a big part of sustainability. First and foremost, that the indigenous cultures that have lived here since time immemorial are able to live their culture. Sustainability has always been their way of life.
We don't waste anything. We take what we need and we leave the rest. Our people have adjusted to the times because we have to. So we adapt to what we have. Take the best of what the Western world has to give us and then leave the rest and try to live in both worlds and balance it out.
When we talk about sustainable, we're really talking about the big business picture, the business of living on Earth.
We are also connected up here in Alaska. Alaska is our community.
I'll wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and come out and look at the stars. There's no light pollution from anything. You look up there and you can actually see the rest of the galaxy.
It's like nature's still there. Nature's still trying to come out and exist. We forget that we're part of nature too.
And just like the tree, when we pass away, we go back into the earth where we came from. That's what we're made from. Yeah. That is the end of our story. Goodness, cheese for listening. Thank you.